using the Mediterranean diet as a model for characterizing diets, not just in the Mediterranean, but for the rest of the world. You'll see two logos in the bottom corner of my slide. FAO is one. The other is the logo for the International Year of Biodiversity. 2010 has been declared by the United Nations as the International Year of Biodiversity. When we speak about biodiversity at FAO and in other UN agencies, we consider it at three levels. We consider it at the level of the ecosystem. We then consider the species within that ecosystem, and then we consider the genetic resource, the food plants and animals at that taxonomic level below species, that genetic resource, that existing vast biodiversity that's bigger than species. I wanted to say a few words about Europe before I go on to the rest of the world. FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, works with agriculture ministries. Every 2 years, FAO has a regional conference for Europe and for other regions. 2 years ago, in Austria, at the 26th FAO Regional Conference for Europe, there was a paper on promotion of traditional regional agriculture and food products. And at this conference, the governing bodies of FAO, your ministers of agriculture and ambassadors to the UN food agencies, said some interesting things and reported, in the final report of that meeting, are these statements. Many delegations highlighted the Mediterranean diet as rich in biodiversity and nutritionally healthy. The promotion of the Mediterranean diet could play a beneficial role in the sustainable development of agriculture in the Mediterranean region. This was a breakthrough because there is maybe some antagonism for non-Mediterranean countries in Europe to acknowledge the Mediterranean diet as an important asset to Europe. And it was the first time the Mediterranean diet was mentioned specifically at an FAO regional conference. They also acknowledged the importance of knowledge networks such as InFoods, the International Network of Food Data Systems, the European Food Information Resource Network, Eurofear, and other food composition database networks for the documentation of local foods and for the provision of data on their nutrient composition. And they remarked that the goal of increased global food production, which is FAO's mandate, including biofuels, should be balanced against the need to protect biodiversity, to protect ecosystems, to protect traditional foods and traditional agricultural practices. Again, a breakthrough statement for FAO. But this was not the first time these kinds of things have been spoken at FAO. And in fact, the Intergovernmental Working Group on Plant Genetic Resources, the secretariat of which is FAO, said a few years ago, before this regional conference, that they wanted FAO to provide guidance on how best to support countries on request to generate, compile, and disseminate cultivar-specific nutrient composition data, as well as indicate the relative priority of cultivar-specific dietary consumption data in order to demonstrate the role of biodiversity in nutrition and food security. So again, we're going back to that taxonomic level below species. We're looking at varieties. And when we talk about nutrients in statements like this, we're including, of course, conventional nutrients, but not just conventional nutrients, also bioactive non-nutrients, those very interesting phytochemicals that have been fairly well characterized in some foods of the Mediterranean diet. And also, the Conference of the Parties, the COP, which is the governing body of the CBD. The CBD is the Convention on Biological Diversity, noted in one of their meetings, again, another breakthrough for the environment sector to note something positive about the food and agriculture sector. They noted the linkage between biodiversity, food, and nutrition, and they requested FAO, together with partners, to undertake something called the Cross-Cutting Initiative on Biodiversity for Food and Nutrition, to work together with relevant organizations such as organizations working on the Mediterranean diet, in order to strengthen existing initiatives on food and nutrition, enhance synergies, and fully integrate biodiversity concerns into their work with a view to the achievement of many things, including the relevant Millennium Development Goals. And then 2 years later, the COP, the Conference of the Parties, adopted the framework for the Cross-Cutting Initiative. And this is the basis of a lot of the nutrition work we now do at FAO. Now, the Millennium Development Goals, there are at least 2 that are directly relevant to the Cross-Cutting Initiative on Biodiversity for Food and Nutrition. The first, to cut in half the proportion of people who suffer from hunger by the year 2015. This is one of the goals of the first World Food Summit, which was held in 1996. We will not reach that goal. And goal 7, to ensure environmental sustainability, integrating principles of sustainable development into national policies and programs, and reverse the loss of environmental resources. We'll see how that works out. But there are challenges. You may not be able to see those headings, but the challenges are that in many countries, in many parts of the world where there is poverty and low levels of development, concerns about biodiversity are very low. So you can see on this slide that the brownish line, low development in a region, they're much more concerned about food security and livelihoods, far less concerned about biodiversity, and even less concerned about food safety. Whereas in the more industrialized, the more affluent countries, there are far greater concerns about biodiversity, less concerns about food security. So this is one of the challenges that we at FAO have, dealing mainly with developing countries.